Good morning and welcome to the Capital Gang. I am Oscar Semoyamsoke, and as Moses Kaule of the morning show would say, with a bevy of topics for discussion on gang. The weather is very good for listening to radio, for listening to the Capital Gang. And in the studio already, I have Honorable Katesh Umbwa. You're most welcome to Gang, Honorable Katesh.
Thank you very much, Oscar, and I'm glad to be back after a long leave.
After a long leave, yes. You've been gallivanting about. Also, I suspect your campaign has started already. We'll wait.
It is better I discuss what I think is important for me and for the country, rather than getting into trivial issues that
fueling social media,
fueled by social media propaganda. It's not my nature to respond to propaganda.
Okay, so the appropriation bill, as the president eventually signed it, was it this week? To begin with, since you are on budget committees and so on,
yes.
What was the appropriation bill? Or is the Appropriation Act now?
Well, I think the bill essentially represents the bill is an outcome of a very lengthy, elaborate process of budgeting in government, starting as early as December, where the budget framework paper is laid before Parliament. It is sent into different committees, sector committees. They discuss and interface with agencies, and then the recommendations from there are adopted by the floor, by the House, sent to the executive, and it is from there then we expect what we call the ministerial policy statement, detailing the expected areas of funding, and those ones are also subjected to a consultative process through the various committees, and they result into the final estimates of the budget, which are then discussed, harmonized by the committees and the budget committee, and eventually they result into the appropriation bill. So it's a process that lasts not less than 6 months. It's a very consultative process, but it's been having its own challenges, and I think what it has culminated into is something that people should be able to now reflect on, especially looking at the weaknesses in the process. Because the president returned the bill with a very strong letter to Parliament,
read out,
and
by the Speaker.
The mood in the House was very, very. I've never seen members of Parliament so agitated and so angry. Those who were able to speak were able to speak, but many couldn't speak. But at the end of the day, I think no one wants to have a standoff with the president, because we respect the president as a fountain of honor, but also for us who have read the political history of Africa, we regard the president in very high regard, and we think that the only thing maybe many members of Parliament thought that could have been done better was if there was a way of him listening to his MPs, especially the members of the caucus, to be able to have dialogue and discuss, because there is this impression that the priorities of Parliament are not the priorities of government
of the country,
which is not true, because if there is no member of Parliament who is planning or appropriating for a constituency in Congo or Somalia, it is the people of Uganda. Secondly, every budget activity actually comes from the ministries. So here is the challenge, Oscar, is that we have had problems for the last 3 years managing the process of budgeting. And I think it is high time Parliament also takes responsibility, because this year, for example, most of the ministries who are supposed to lay ministerial policy statements by 15th of March to Parliament, most of them laid dummy ministerial policy statement. And they didn't only lay dummy, but most of them do not comply with the requirements under the rules of procedure. For example, the rules of procedure require that the policy statement shall be in a prescribed form by the minister responsible for finance and shall contain the following: the achievements of the vote for the previous financial year. Number 2, the annual and 3 months work plans and outcomes, objectives, outputs, targets, performance indicators of the work plans and outcomes. Number 3, it should be having the annual procurement plan of the vote. It should have the annual recruitment plan of the vote. And it should have a statement of actions taken by the vote to implement recommendations of Parliament in respect of the Auditor General's report. It should also have the report on the actions taken from the recommendations of Parliament. Now, these are requirements under the rules of procedure. But
every ministry should present that
is supposed to be
by 15th March.
By 15th of March.
Yeah.
How then do we allow, as Parliament, year in, year out? First of all, you allow ministerial policy statements which are insufficient, which are not complying with this. Number 2, in this particular year, we allow dummy entries. So you send them to dummy.
What does dummy entry mean?
Most ministries were not ready. So they just picked some old ones, changed the cover, and laid before Parliament. So when these is there
a penalty system? Like when we are filing, you first put a return and then you come back and amend it.
You see,
so you don't get caught in a penalty.
Under our rules, perhaps maybe we need to look at the process of verification. If someone has laid on the table, okay, how do we verify that quickly in that process to see that what he has laid is actually true? Because if they change the cover and just lay it, I can tell you most of the committees, after getting these dummies, could not work. They could not work. And when they finally had to get the real copies, then you have a challenge of work plans. So you have Parliament struggling with ministries or agencies to justify expenditures that have been allocated. And the unfortunate bit is that the whole country and all of us as Parliament, we are just focusing on the 750 billion reallocation, but this is a budget of 72 trillion. So even us as members of Parliament, you find MPs, everybody is talking about less than 1%, but they going into the details of the remaining budget. It's you know, people don't look at it. Now, what is left with Parliament? I remember the Budget Committee of Parliament sat for 2 weeks asking agencies work plans, procurement plans, and they don't have. And then the funny thing is that even our own committees, because of weak leadership in committees, we have become consolidators of unfunded priorities. The ministers are walking into the committees saying, we have unfunded priority. So you end up consolidating more than 26 trillion unfunded priorities coming from the members of the executive. Someone comes with a presidential directive. Then we ask, you are a minister, you sit in cabinet. If you are saying this is very critical, why is it that cabinet did not put money on it? Okay? If it's a presidential directive, why is it not prioritized? How can you have wage shortfall as an unfunded priority? And then you are begging Parliament to find money from where? So we have found ourselves in a situation where we need to have a conversation, because the entire flag is on Parliament, which I feel it's extremely unfair, because everybody needs to share the blame of, but also as Parliament, we need to be very serious. We should not entertain things which are not ready.
Very true. And let me take this opportunity to welcome Lydia Wanyoto, your Honorable Lydia Wanyoto Mtende. Most welcome to the Capital Gang.
Thank you, Oscar, and to our listeners. Good morning to Honorable Katesh. You are viral on the social media, like OO has said, but that's okay. You're a leader, so we will see how we go around it. To the people of Umbale, I've brought you greetings from Umbale City. They are very good listeners of Capital Gang. There's a one Rogers Wandulu who promised to give me coffee, Arabica coffee from BC, where Honorable Nandala is our chairman of the union. The still standing union in the country for coffee farmers, but maybe next Saturday I'll bring it. Tomorrow we are going to Chankwanzi, SEC members, ministers, and all permanent secretaries. I hope that some of the issues Honorable Katesh has raised, we shall raise them and find some level working ground. But most important, I would really want to see the traditional caucus meetings start happening under the leadership of the president. And I've said this, I'll say it again whenever I have the forum. Thank you.
Indeed. So I wanted to take you backwards now that you have thrown out that lamentation, Honorable Katesh. The problems could have started with Parliament. You remember the PSST said that they present budgets and then you tinker with them. So when we first had this discussion, the executive had presented a budget of 52 trillion. By the time you sent it for signing, it was 71 trillion. So Parliament should be the ones to talk about the 20% that extra 20 trillion that came in. Then the president sends it back with reasons in a letter read out by the speaker. That's where it started.
Oscar, the Parliament has become a punching bag. It is a very soft target for anybody, including...
So you're saying Parliament has become a punching bag?
It's a punching bag, including some of the extremists in government who think that maybe Parliament should not exist, or maybe... And some of these are technical people, because they make reckless statements, and it's very unfortunate, because Oscar, if you look at the budgeting process, this particular budget, for the second or third year running, Minister of Finance brings a agenda the day we are supposed to pass the budget. So this particular 14 trillion actually came in last minute. There is nobody who can claim that they thoroughly interrogated it. So the problem, of course, I've said it, that because if you bring a budget, even the first budget they laid before Parliament was 59, then it came to 60. But remember, what they lay goes to the sector committees. So the sector committees and accounting officers are discussing the estimates, which later change, and there is no time for people to go back and review. So even a corrigenda by itself, it is a budget, it should actually be examined by the sector committees, but there is no time. So they bring it under the throat of Parliament, and because we have allowed to be used, we accept it, and then afterwards, the punch starts that, Parliament is useless, they tinker with the budget. Let me just give you an example. In the financial year 2022, and I know Lydia can pick this and Parliament, the Minister of Finance presented a budget under one particular vote, which is very, very, very suspicious for every majority members of Parliament. Vote 130, Treasury Operations. In 2022-23, they provided 14.8 trillion under debt servicing. Most people in the budget committee, but also in the other committees, wondered. They asked for explanations. What are we servicing? The details were not properly elaborated. Parliament, in its own wisdom, out of that, looking at the previous years, reallocated about 900 billion out of the 14.8 trillion. Everybody went up in arms, choosing Parliament, of tinkering with the debt. They are not going to service it, etc. And immediately the financial year started, the minister brought a supplementary budget. The supplementary budget, remember, originally was 14.8, reduced by 900. Finance said you must restate it, but also increase it to 18.8 trillion. And the 18.8, of course, they justified, they needed to pay BOA 288 billion, DRC 250, the ROCO bills of exchange 54 billion. There was a component of special court awards of 138, Bank of Uganda charges 150. There was a justification that the international benchmark interest rates had gone up, the euro and Libor. So they made the case for an increase, and the supplementary was passed. So it resulted into a provision of debt servicing of 18.8 trillion.
Debt servicing.
Debt servicing. What happens during the year? They gave out warrants, the ministry gave out warrants of 16.8 trillion. And what was finally spent, Oscar, was 13.8 trillion. So you come crying, saying you debt servicing, you people have, in fact, eventually what was spent, 13.8, was less than what was the original budget. So the members of Parliament say, but look, you are over providing for this item, and yet we need resources to deal with the priorities of government that are coming from the ministries, the health center, schools. All these ones come from the ministries. But you are saying, I need 18.8 trillion, you get it, then you spend only 13.8, and every year then you say that Parliament is tinkering with your budget. So we need to have an honest discussion that is devoid of extreme negative mentality against the Parliament. Because I can tell you that in that Parliament, you have people who have brains, who can actually look at these numbers and understand. So you cannot claim, that particular example I've given you cannot claim. Number two, we have been saying, Oscar,
yes, please,
that if we are looking at the resource, why don't we plug the leakages For example, we have so many autonomous agencies generating revenue, but they are spending at source. If you have said that all the local governments collect your money, send it to the center, all the universities collect your money, send it to the center, then we give you, then why are we still allowing some agencies to spend at source? For example, there are very many. We have many entities where government has invested. Where are the dividends? I've never seen a column under the revenue side that shows dividends or earnings from the investments of government. And we've been asking the ministry, can you be able to tell us? And this is where now I agree with Lydia, that perhaps we need to sit back as a caucus and have these discussions, because you should not assume that people are not adding value. We represent the people. Even if you are an educated technical person, you must be able to understand that you are dealing with people who are also educated, but they also represent people. So we should be able to have a discussion. We cannot continue passing ministerial policy statements without work plans. And you as a minister, you provide the ceiling, you don't ask for work plans. I have told you that the rules of procedure are very clear. You are supposed to provide work plans, annual procurement plans, recruitment plans. When we interact with these people, they have nothing. And the money is there. We have looked at even some of the loan projects which have been passed, but the biggest percentage is going into usage consultancies, things that are not related to the brick and mortar. So we need to have a discussion in our caucus. The ministry should have a sober discussion, but also members of parliament, my colleagues. This business of not reading and for example, everybody is looking at 750. We have been accused of diverting but how many members of parliament have actually looked at the appropriation that goes to their districts? And then you look at the people who are well positioned and how their districts, how much the budgets are going into their districts vis-a-vis the others. So we should not reduce ourselves as MPs, allow procedural lapses to go through, and then we become a punching bag, and we are crying out, and we have really become a punching bag. The public has us, and I think now it is survival for the fittest.
Namfi is also in the studio, and she's going to add on to, even before she settled, she was ready to punch Parliament.
Yes, I would be surprised if she doesn't.
And
good morning to our listeners. And Katesh, I'm glad to see you back. There were rumors in the corridors that you're on the run. I was like, that's not Katesh. He faces his accusers. Usually. Then we have a guest as well, Honorable Goreth Namugga. Ah, you're from my clan.
You have to add that she's my friend. Or why have I told her lie? But you're my friend.
So you're most welcome, MP.
Thank you.
MP of Maogola County, Deputy Chairperson, Public Accounts Committee of the NUP political party. You're most welcome to the gang.
Thank you.
Just a final question to you. Katesh, let me stop this conversation of Gayaza girls. Are there other parliamentarians as upset as you seem to be, or
no? The parliamentarians, and I think it is important that the executive, especially our party, finds a way of us having a discussion over this issue, because we don't want it to boil to a situation where members of parliament are saying, look, we put money for ambulances, executive removed it, and so that we appear disconnected amongst our voters. I think that will be very unnecessary, and it can be avoided, because as I have said, there is no member of parliament who is lobbying for a constituency that is in Congo or Somalia. and there is no member of parliament, there is no budgeted activity that does not come from the executive.
Okay.
In fact, the first submission of unfunded priorities consolidated that was presented before the budget committee was 26 trillion. And this is where I have been saying, as a parliament, as these Namuggas are committee leaders, you cannot reduce yourselves to consolidators of unfunded priorities. The ministry comes, they cry to you, there is wage, we don't have wage, we don't have what. You send them back to cabinet and say, if your thing is priority, why is it funded? Why do you want it to bring the pressure on parliament, knowing that parliament cannot increase the budget itself?
Okay.
Why don't you go back and interface with your colleague Minister of Finance to say, I have a presidential directive here, can you provide money? So as parliamentary committees, the leadership of committees, to be there all the time, every year, go through the stress of consolidating unfunded priorities, year in, year out. It is the first disease that needs to be cured.
Lydia, when the bill at the time was returned to Parliament, the President said he was worried, he even mentioned corruption in Parliament. And you've seen Kateshia putting up a heated defense on why it should have been signed anyway by the President. But isn't that the President's prerogative anyway?
Well,
I've not understood your comment.
The President had a right to return the bill.
It's a procedure matter. The President,
and then he even accused Parliament of having corruption.
It's a procedure matter. In all matters of law, legislation, sometimes the bill comes from the executive and goes to Parliament. Parliament debates and the passage goes to the President for assent. He may assent to it, or he may return it, but with justification. He has to return it and say, I've not signed this bill because of A, B, C, D, and E. And then Parliament has the right to send it back without any amendments, without due recognition of what the President is explaining, or they can attend to his issues, amend accordingly, and then return for assent. In this case, they chose to
amend
in his interest and send it back. So it's not I wanted to tell our listeners that's not the first time, but also it is procedure. It's within the laws of the processes for legislation. Only that this is the first time maybe an appropriation bill has been returned. But it is not the first time there have been complaints or concerns in the appropriation bill. I've seen shuttling meetings of budget committee with the executive. So in the past, actually, which I want us to resume, is caucus used to sit. What happened to caucus? Because you see the Namuggas, who is also my friend, think that we caucus against the interests of the wider picture.
Against
but
Parliament.
we are the majority. How can we caucus against ourselves? Or that we caucus against maybe opposition. That's me. I keep telling you, and this was the first time, Oscar, you are my witness. I do not believe there's opposition in Uganda. It's just interests. Maybe people speak more louder than the others, but we all have an interest for our people or for a particular alignment of something. So I don't know. On my side where I sit, I'm going to continue campaigning for caucus. That's the best forum. Katesh, I don't know if we don't want to push for caucus. When we all meet, the 300 and so of you can now, with the leadership of the chairman, you make a case on the floor and make amendments. There are all no radios crying. They are on the floor of the Parliament. In fact, most of them on the stairs. They like the stairs of Parliament and get news bites. Why are you not calling caucus and say on the 590 whatever billion, this is the issue. In our constituencies, this is the issue. Some people are pulling towards their constituencies at the expense of other priorities. Say it in caucus and then go and clean it on the floor of the house. Majority is good, but a weak majority is annoying, because I see a lot of people, they have power, they have mandate, they are crying. How can you cry when you have mandate and power and the flow? What has happened to the management
and the numbers
and the leadership?
That's why
of the NRM caucus.
For example, let me add.
Surely,
you see the budget.
Am I wrong, Katesh?
No. For example, let me give you an example. The budget, we are supposed to finalize.
NRM has even donated your time.
We are supposed to finalize, I think, by end of month. But the pressure.
From where?
I mean, you are a member of SEC. You are a member of SEC. The party is led by the chief whip and the leader of government business in the house. This process that the president asked for actually is valid. You should have, once you have made proposals as parliament, it is healthy that you should actually have time to discuss.
Yeah.
But why do you want to put pressure to finish when you have about a week or so ahead? Yet you could have actually provided for an opportunity for people to discuss. But who is bringing the pressure?
Okay. Let Lydia finish off. I want to go to...
And I want to...
Honorable Namugga.
Really, I was going to look for Honorable Bwalu, but it's just one of you. And all of you, let me use the opportunity of Gang, because many of you listen to Gang. I want to plead with you, members. You are leaders in your own right. You have a mandate of the country. Stop telling lies on forums where we do not have a right of response. I listened to some of your colleagues, including Honorable Bwalu, particularly, saying that the inability of Parliament to do due diligence on the appropriation bill was because of the NRM party delaying to appoint leaders of the leadership committee. That's wrong. First of all, NRM is one political party in Parliament that sponsors leadership in the committees. It's part of the rules of procedure because we are a political party dispensation. But we also did not want to be stampeded. You remember, the list of the proposals were brought to us. I was in Imbale. I drove in the night. You want to cause us accidents because of your inabilities. The list was brought on Tuesday morning. The
list of what?
Of appointments to sectoral committees. Tuesday morning, SEC was supposed to sit at midday, and they are not followed. Now let me say things I wouldn't be saying here because it was now out of air. To correct, do not now use political parties to enhance your incompetencies. I'm sorry to use that word, because you bring a list for appointment on Tuesday morning. You call SEC at midday, and you want us to rubber stamp when we have rules and regulations that govern SEC on leadership of committees. So we said no. Then they came and stampeded. They're saying, there's business in the house. There's business in the house. When we put our foot down and guided as we are supposed to guide, because we are the leadership of the political party, we want to be fair, we want to follow the rules we use. Then the other day they were telling us there is no business in the house. You were sent on recess on the back. So what was the urgency? At least for NRM on, what was the urgency? And then we even guided. We said we are going to give a chance to members of the NRM to apply for committees. In the meantime, let committee work go on, because you are part of the Commonwealth parliamentary system. I hope you are aware, Namugga and Katesh, you are aware that you are part of the Commonwealth parliamentary system, where the senior most member of the committee provides leadership where there is a gap. Don't your chairpersons fall sick? Does that mean that the committee will not sit? Don't they go abroad? Because there's no reason. So we said continue the work as we provide leadership.
Okay.
Now you go on the floor and say that the committee will not work because NRM has not chosen leaders. I want to let you know that we are going to be firm, we are going to be consistent, and we are going to do our work as a political party.
That will change.
Also, you do your work.
Honorable Namugga.
I'll begin. First of all, allow me to respond to Lydia's submission in regard to sectoral committees. Lydia knows that sectoral committees serve for a period of 1 year and they expire. And the NRM knows that towards the expiry, you ought to have, made all those submissions, the administration.
It is not us. It is Parliament to write to the parties.
Parliament, you have the majority. Parliament is under you. So you must know that that is why we tell you that NRM has issues everywhere. But let's leave that.
Oh, no, doesn't
have. First of all, I should inform the country that it is a disappointment. It is a disappointment to the country to begin the financial year without fully constituting sectoral committees. That is a very big weakness. We got members To some committees, we have deputies, but not chairpersons. So I think the NRM don't just
business should continue. Sure. There is a parliamentary Commonwealth practice.
Lydia,
guided.
Do the things in time.
We shouldn't be stampeded.
Hold on, Lydia.
Oscar, on this one, I'm not going to budge.
Hold on, Lydia.
Do not stampede the NRM leadership.
Just one second.
Don't make that mistake.
Lydia, just 1 second. In this court of public, one person speaks. So you have already spoken. Let Honorable Namugga speak.
From Gayaza girl.
So let her speak, and then when you have want to say something, you speak again.
Don't run away from Commonwealth parliamentary system.
The Gaza girl should admit that she has been given time to speak,
yes.
And she should be given a paper and a pen to take note. And she has a smartphone; she can also take note. If if she feels that she should, make a response to what I've given, she will use her time. But it's a disappointment to the country or upon the NRM to failure to NRM. That is you. Sectoral committees. No difference. Sectoral committees are under. No, Lydia.
Lydia.
No, Lydia. Now, okay, I've given you my time to submit.
Who is the majority in Parliament?
But
you write to political parties.
Who is the majority in Parliament?
Write to political parties and say.
Close. Damoju.
No, I think we should respect one another with due respect.
Don't tell lies here. Now that I'm here, you don't tell lies.
Then you speak alone.
And I'm telling the listeners
okay, you speak.
That we don't want lies.
No.
We don't want consistency of lies.
But this is even a redundant discussion.
Lydia, this is unfair of you of a senior. No, this is unfair of Lydia. This is unfair of you as a senior leader. I've listened to you and allow me make a submission. Then you rebuttal. So I'm informing the country that it is a disappointment to the country for the NRM to fail to constitute fully sectoral committees. Because whether Parliament went for recess or not, we ought to have had them and in time, period. When it comes to the issues of budgeting, it is the issue of budgeting.
Yeah.
When it comes to the issue of budgeting, I'm lucky that I've been part of public service. When I joined the Parliament for the first 2.5 years, I was part of the budget committee. And lucky enough, this side I'm on the side of accountability, where we ensure that the budget that was passed is, first of all, implemented. I should say we have institutions, fully fledged institutions, to ensure that we get right from budget conferences, say that we get all those input right from our districts through the ministries to Parliament. And this time round, I want to thank the 11th Parliament for this budgeting process. I'm fully convinced that we did our part. However, I should also admit that to some extent, we have relaxed on ensuring that these ministers do their part. Honorable Katesh has made a submission. Every minister appears before a sectoral committee to defend their ministerial policy statements. These compose of the work plans and the indicative planning figures, and even they indicate the previous performances of the previous financial year, for this case 22-23, then the half-year performance. We interrogate the budget fully. We have all the time at that level to scrutinize the budget. So it is unfair for Mr. Museveni to allude that it is the budget committee that is corrupt, they are thieves at that level. This is a process that we handle as a team. So all these submissions come from the executive to Parliament to sectoral committees. Then Parliament, the budget committee handles a consolidated budget. It was so unfair of Mr. Museveni to write, for example, that for the previous 4 years, Parliament has been distorting the budget. This has equally been said by Mr. Gobi, the PS, even when he appeared before the Public Accounts Committee. He said that Parliament distorts the budget. And he asked us, you ask yourselves, why do we start with a budget framework paper of 52 trillion, then it goes to 58, it goes to 68, then it goes to 72. Where is the problem? I asked him, who does the technical part of it? So we should start with asking ourselves, where is the problem before you get to the budget committee? I want Mr. Gobi to come out and the Minister of Finance to compare his ministerial policy statements and all his work plans, inclusive of the National Development Plan, plus the NRM Manifesto. What did the Parliament bring in that is new? That wasn't part of, say, for example, the National Development Plan, part of the NRM Manifesto, and was not included anywhere in the ministerial policy statements. Because distorting a budget means that the budget committee gets to some level and brings in new ideas. That is very wrong. And I should also admit on the side of Parliament that we are given little time when it comes to processing of the budget. For this, I should say it as a member of Parliament, not that I'm in the opposition. We've faced challenges where ministers submit dummies on the floor of parliament. Somebody brings a document and says, this is a ministerial policy statement.
That one Katesh has
This
told
is a
us
ministerial
already.
policy statement for the ICT ministry.
Yeah.
With a header. Inside, there is something totally different. And this we should, you remember one time it was the Honorable Matthias Simpuga who stood up and said, Right Honorable Speaker, we need to some extent to look at what is inside. Because after submitting these dummies, then they get back. Please allow us time. Let us have these ones processed. Then that is an act of parliament. Because the community now assumes, yes, the community assumes that we received these documents in the mandatory time that is stipulated by the law. So we should admit that never in life should parliament accept to be duped by the executive on submitting incomplete documents. That must stop.
Okay.
Two, we must respect institutions of government when it comes, for example, to planning. The Minister of Finance, Mr. Matia Kasaija, for this mess that is being talked about, he should be held accountable 100% because he represents the president at all levels of budgeting. He does represent them. And tell us a time when the budget committee has never interfaced with the Minister of Finance, to the extent that even when we are handling the ministerial policy statements, where we get to a level of need for more information from the Minister of Finance, for example, where they give IPFs that actually those unnecessary budget cuts. You go to ICT that had a budget, for example, of 100 billion, it is cut to 50 by half. Then you ask them if you look at the theme of the budget and digital transformation is one of our core, then why do you underfund ICT? Can't we look out for giving more money to the ministry? We reach an extent of interfacing with finance at the ministerial. So I mean at the consideration of the ministerial policy statements. So what do I want to bring to table for discussion? We have institutions of government. Everyone appreciates the institutions are there. One question, $1 million question. Are they independent?
No.
Are they independent? No. Mr. God one time said, the Minister of Finance submits, for example, a supplementary of 2 trillion. When it goes to the executive, it leaves at 3. When it goes to Parliament, it is at 4. So we should ask, who is supposed to do what?
Okay.
Whatever was laid out by the president should be a beginning point to start respecting systems. But who is number one in disrespecting systems here? Mr. Museveni has 100% demeaned and undermined institutions of government, every single sector. Everything works on a blueprint. That is why you have their manifesto of the NRM at around 56% performance when the National Development Plan is at 17%. One asks, where do you get what you implement in the manifesto? That means at times the executive brings the things that are not in the National Development Plan. That is where we lose it and miss it. Instead of blaming Parliament, calling them thieves, actually painting a picture as if the 750 billion, the members of Parliament took them to their homes. This money would have worked on roads. Are you aware that we have close to 14.5 trillion unutilized loans, expensively borrowed, on concessional terms, expensively borrowed and remains unutilized? Then for you bring priorities. Yes, Parliament was wrong in allocating money to schools, to roads and to health. For you come and have the 25 billion for commitment fees. Let us pay for the laxity of these colleagues of ours who borrow money without having concept notes, without planning. You have all these mischiefs around there. Then you bring you bring the 300 million. For God's sake, you give Rocco 300 billion.
Hospitals. 300
billion. I can give you an example. Country, we had queries on issues of health. Simple. We bought ICU equipment expensively. Go to Mulago. We bought over 40 beds with fully equipped. Only 16 beds are operational. Do you know the reason? We don't have staff. We asked them, what is the budget for staff? We need 66 billion for a year to have these ICU beds that we are bought for over 60 billion fully operational. We need staff. Do you know the staffing levels of the Ministry of Health? They are around 30% across board. You had the Honorable Dana Twine, the Minister, the PS for Health, on the issue of the Entebbe Regional Referral Hospital that had been given 3 billion by the Budget Committee. I wrote a letter, all of you saw it, about the delivery beds. Entebbe Regional Referral Hospital, not even having a single delivery bed, a single one. Do you know what happened? Even the 3 billion that was allocated to Entebbe Regional Referral Hospital was removed. And Diana wrote to me, she wrote back and said, Honorable Namugga, the issue is not the bed alone. Entebbe has been a regional referral hospital for the last 5 years. But it operates a budget of a general referral, a general hospital, not a referral hospital. Then I asked for more information. Katesh, pick interest in this. We need to know how many health centers were elevated from different levels, say from 3 to 4, from general to referral, but still operate budgets of the previous status. That is also a challenge. Then go to the staffing. Entebbe Regional Referral Hospital is at 15%. So let us look at priorities of this country than looking at priorities of an individual. Lastly, I was with him when we were still in the budget committee.
With Katesh?
Yes, with Katesh. They went to State House. Do you know what Mr. Museveni told them? I will face anybody who will sabotage my budget. My budget. Whose budget?
Even
since when? My budget. Since when?
He's the president of the country.
Since when did the budget become his budget? This is the budget for the people of the Republic of Uganda. It should be a budget for and in the interest of the people of this country, not an individual.
Honorable Namugga, you have achieved something.
The president is the Minister of Finance.
Yes.
So you don't fault him on that statement.
No. Honorable, thank you.
Is that fact?
Honorable Namugga, first pause. Let me congratulate you on something. I have not seen anyone who can keep Namfi quiet on this one.
Because the only one who was making sense.
There's a serious achievement.
Went into I don't know, meandering.
Yes.
And
so
and I was wondering why, because from our notes
and now there are many messages saying Namfi should. So I should tell the listeners, welcome Dr. Chris Mukiza, welcome to Gang. In fact, I told you this topic will end very quickly, not knowing, because I'm meeting Honorable Namugga on air for the first time. So you're most welcome to Gang, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome back from the break. In the break as well, there's a little agreement, but that's where we are. The guys and girls took time to argue as well. And Namfi, you have been patient listening to Honorable Namugga, and for once I have commended Honorable Namugga for keeping Namfi quiet. Your 2 minutes are on now because she has said everything you wanted to say.
Because Lydia's submission was giving me a headache.
Go to the microphone.
And then she tried to bring it back to where? No.
That's the question I was answering. You came late.
Go on.
I came when Katesh was submitting, and I listened to your whole submission, but I will go into why it was giving me a headache. Oscar,
you need the microphone.
This discussion is like finding the teachers in Kapele Biong, in a UPE school in Kapele Biong, discussing systems of their school, and the chief school inspector is bringing them to book. Meanwhile, this school has no chairs, has no desks, they are under trees, but they are discussing the systems in place. So for me, it's even confusing when they start getting down to the nitty-gritties of who in the, when the caucus was supposed to sit, who was supposed to do what, and we are ignoring the key issue, that is, we do not have separation of powers in this country. I have said it before. At the helm of this country is a leader who doesn't even recognize or respect anybody, doesn't recognize or respect any institution. Therein lies the problem. What happened this week was from, and I know, Oscar, you're looking at me worriedly, like
I was pleased, Namugga, taking your time.
Like, where are we going with this? But I will stay within the confines.
Please.
It doesn't matter what happened with the appropriation bill. This man literally held everyone by the balls. He held his breath till
morning show, please.
He held his breath. You know, when a kid, a 3-year-old, holds his breath and refuses and even faints till they do what he wants to be done. That's what happened this week. And unfortunately, I wish Ugandans were not apathetic at this moment, because it was incredulous watching what was happening in Parliament. And I don't care which systems or caucuses or what is in the budget. This single man single-handedly held everyone at ransom to get money and remove it from medical care, from school, from services Ugandans need, so that we take it to his whims. And don't be deceived that there is nothing in it for him to budget for Roko 300 billion. And the rest of the parliamentarians, their problem is because they are also there for selfish, greedy purposes. They don't even have the moral authority to call out this person who has held our country at ransom for 40 years. And this is what has been doing year in, year out. He has budgets, like Ramadan has said, the budget goes 2 trillion, and then it's 3 trillion, and then he includes this and that, and half of it is classified, and he has all these advisors. I mean, Semuju again and again comes on the show and breaks us and gives us a breakdown of this money. Look at what Ruto did in Kenya when Kenyans went to the streets. Those are the very same things we're discussing here. He said there's no office of the First Lady, there is no office of this, there's no office of this. We are going to do this, but why did it take him people going to the streets and people dying for that to happen? And that is exactly what is happening in Uganda at even a worse, it's even worse here because we have one person. And when NRM starts saying, oh, NRM should have done this, and then that wouldn't have changed anything, Oscar. The problem we have on our hand is one man. He's the John Rambo of this party. And he doesn't care what Katesh thinks, what Sek thinks, what Wanyoto thinks, or what the opposition thinks. Because he knows that these are his minions. If it's a chess game, these are just pawns. And when I see the pawns taking themselves so seriously that we should have sat at this time, I even get a headache. Because, Oscar, at the end of the day, if we don't deal with the problem that is the executive, who doesn't recognize any system, any organization, we are still going to go on like this till he dies. So hopefully that should be in the next few years. But if it's not that, we are still going to be in this mess for a lot longer.
I thought I was giving you the look to you know.
I have.
I was giving you the look.
I could say that I am not saying. So what I'm saying, Katesh, whatever NRM says, whatever NRM should have done or shouldn't have done, Oscar, I do not believe would have changed this whole situation. If he sends back something and says, because even these now we realize that the Namujus and Kambas who are arrested were not okay. What they did was wrong, and they should have been arrested. But it wasn't in the public interest. They were arrested because he was defied by these people, and the budget committee allocated money to where. So what did he do? Get the state machinery and a big stick, hit them, and then return it while watching them and telling them, now you know the power that I have. But trust me, it was not because someone who appoints an ombudsman to take a look at the URA corruption and appoints a person who has been convicted of corruption, that person isn't interested in corruption, or everything is about him and the interest. And at this point, I don't even understand why, after 40 years, you still need 300 billion to steal from a whole country. I don't.
Thank you, Nafi. And there I was thinking, Dr. Chris Mukiza, that will start on census very early. I had not counted on Honorable Namugga and Namfi. Your social media is saying that young lady has her facts. You know, I did not. This is her first time on Gang.
One time, I was going on CBS with her from Parliament.
Did you have enough Luganda for her?
She asked me for a lift.
Yeah.
So I thought we are going on a friendly talk. So when I reached, she turned around and was blasting me. Because my Uganda is a bit
weak.
So, but if you hadn't known, that's how she is. But
you should have the courage to call out your leadership. If you don't, and then you start throwing the ping pong balls back
now
at
that
each
is for your conclusion. So,
which party do you belong to?
Chris Mukiza, congratulations on pulling off the census. When we first had you in the very first Gang show, all of us were very worried that the thing wasn't going well. So what was the turnaround?
Me, I was never worried, as you saw. I know that you are pushing me in the corner to get worried. But as a seasoned statistician and a public servant,
it is good we pushed you in that corner because things happened. I
knew I had my game right. So those challenges exist, and that's why they appoint people like us in those leadership positions to address the challenges. The main challenges, as we said, they are already documented. The substantiveness of the challenges was in Greater Kampala, which is always a problem in any program. Be it Burungi Bwansi, whatever, Greater Kampala, they don't want to work like other regions in this country. So, and I came back on Saturday, I think on a day on 18th, and I told you how far we are going. The panelists requested me that if we have not covered everybody, we should give them chance. And when we analyzed on Sunday morning, in fact, immediately after here, I found out that there are some respondents that we had not covered, and we asked for extension, which was granted in cabinet. So we covered 99.2%, as we have reported, and 0.8% have been accounted for, while they were not covered in the census. So we managed to wade through those challenges, and Uganda is the first African country to publish the census results in 30 days after the end of enumeration. And this was enabled by the digitization. When we rolled out the digital census, we already developed the tabulation plans, the schemes. We knew what we would get out first for the country to start consuming. And you have the numbers, as you know. Uganda is now 45,935,046 people. Of those, 23,440,016 are female, which represents 51%, and males are 22,495,030, which is 49%. Generally the sex ratio is 96, meaning in every 100 female, there's a 96 male. Ladies beat males by almost 1 million. And the population of 45.3 is an increase by 11.3 million that we had in 2014.
An increase by?
11.3 million. And the average growth over the 10-year period from 2014 to 2020 is 2.9%, the growth rate of the population, as compared to the 3% that was between 2002 and 2014. The implication is that the population growth is now receding.
I'm trying to follow you as well.
Yes, it's now receding, and there are so many reasons as to that. In 2014, we registered or covered 7,245,245 households. In 2024, the households that are in Uganda is 10,845,119, which is an increase by 3.6 million households.
In 10 years?
In 10 years.
And household size?
And the household size has reduced to 4.4.
Really?
4.4? From the 4.7 that we had in 2014. So families are becoming smaller. Now, I think I saw on your poster you are talking of the challenges of Generation Z and what have you. I think in our report we produce the population distribution data.
Yeah, 50.5%.
And if you can see the pyramid is a diagrammatic expression showing the age distribution. Bottom is hip, it is very rounded, and the upper side gets thinner. And this one of ours is actually very Very interesting because, as you saw,
it's 70%.
The children
0 to 30 years old.
Yes, 0 to 30, they are 73%. 73.2%. And the children, the dependents, those still going to school from 0 to 17 are 23,182,671, which is a 50.5%. Now, when you get the youth, they are 10,418,337. This is 22.7%. Now, we have to look at these ones who are 17. 17, 16, we are going into the youth group. And now, the older persons, those who are above 60 plus, they are 2,303,584, which is 5%. And those who are above 85, the ones that lady thinks they can die, they can easily die.
It's called the Namfi.
Namfi, yes. They are 255,309. And what we are seeing from the pyramid,
you are saying should die.
when we see in the pyramid, when they reach the age of 80, the death rates actually reduce.
Oh.
They become more. From 80, 85 and above 100, they are more than from 70 to 80.
The
so
death rate.
It's an interesting thing when you look at the numbers.
They live longer.
I think when you cross that threshold, you have some sort of longevity genes. Now, the most other interesting thing is that the working age population, which is from 14 to 64 years, is 25,527,111, which is 55.6%.
But
so the remainder,
I wanted to query that. Working age 14 years?
Yes, that is the...
At 14 years?
Yes, they do. Villages, these are the workers, especially own account workers.
They go to the gardens, they look after cattle.
They fetch water.
They are on the construction sites.
Yes. Yeah. So
the mining sector in Uganda, which is growing, telling them to go down.
Of course, formerly we take the ones below 18 to be child labor.
Okay.
But in Uganda, the context and even those of 12, but the international standard is 14 to 64. They work, but also once the life expectancy increases, even those at 70, they may be able to work. So it means that the dependence that this economy has and that the government has to look at is 44.4%. These are the children below 17 up to 17 and those who are not working from 65 onwards. I think that's...
What percentage is for both those demographics?
The dependents?
Yes.
They are 44.4%.
Wow.
When you get over the whole population, whereas those ones who are now producing goods and services, who are participating in the economy, are 55.6%.
Yeah.
But you now remember that many of those are these ones in universities. If you talk in secondary schools, 14 to 22, they are in university, they are studying. And this big population, which is 50.5, is what the government and these politicians should look at. How do we harness the demographic dividends of this young country in the coming years? And that's where the budgeting, the planning and the budgeting comes in. We need now to put up enabling infrastructure that will absorb these younger children into employment, that will make sure that the goods they will be producing is marketed, and they should have high human capital. The training, education sector must be strengthened. That is responsive to what to what will drive the economy. The health sector has to be strengthened.
Indeed, this
and so forth.
NAMF is despondent because if you think 0 to 17 years, that's 50%. That really is like the dependency rate, isn't that, Dr. Mkiza?
Yes, that one plus the ones who are above, who are not working, they are dependents. That's why they are a total population.
But as he points out, from 17 to about 23. They're still in school anyway.
Yes.
So that is also a dependent population. So we are looking at something like 60% of our population being dependent.
Well, the census, the report shows 0 to 30 years. That's 72%, 73%
of the population.
And now many households still have their 30-year-olds at home. So, and the question of the Gen Z, so you'd started on it.
But I thought that's what I was saying.
Yes, you did.
The Gen Z are those who are born when?
1996 to...
those going up to 30, I guess.
So those are between 26, from 26 up to now. And you can now see them in the
second bracket.
In the youth. They are youth. Generally,
22%,
and they are 22%. Of course, some 30 are millennials. But they sometimes work with them. And that's why we are saying we need to give them education. We need to skill them.
You said education, health.
We need to skill them. Not only this formal education going to Makerere, Chambogo. They need to get skills to be productive, to earn income, and also pay taxes. Because once they earn, they will pay tax. Once they produce, the goods produced will be taxed. And the economy will be spurred. So we need to prepare them.
So just final to you, Dr. Mkiza. What about the naysayers? So I tell Dr. Mkiza that I live in Kasubi, Kakajo zone. I have 7 people in my household. Someone came and wrote a number on our gate and went away. Another one tell Doctor his results could have been cooked. I was personally not enumerated. Crispy Kaheru, who has said he's very impressed with Honorable Namugga, says he's in with the 0.8 not counted. So what do you tell these people who have doubts? How do you assuage their doubts?
They are actually, he has answered it. They are in 0.8.
They're in the 0.
And there is no census in the world that has covered everybody. One, these people are not even sensitive to their country. We extended and told everybody that has not been reached to contact the LC. We gave numbers. I gave numbers of all senior management that please, if you have not been counted, call. And this one we did it from Tuesday on the 21st up to 26th. So if you never called, meaning you are actually hiding, so that you come to discredit the census results. They should be warned. Why are they now saying this when we opened up?
I have a friend in Nigeria. He went and kidnapped them. He just said, he went and said, no, I'm taking you in my car. And he took them home for counting. Luckily for me, a neighbor recommended you go to that man's house before he comes back.
We did in Nigeria, we actually interviewed the households. As I told you the other time, some enumerators did not understand what they were doing. And much of the extension was focusing on Kampala. So if you never called the senior management staff and your LC, you should shut up until next census.
So from you, final.
The most organized blood during that census period.
From you, Dr. Mkiza, final. What's the way forward?
The way forward is now we are going to analyze this data, produce final results in September, where we shall answer the remaining questions. We have answered only 2 questions. How many people are we? And where we are. What is remaining is how are we living? How are we living is their incomes, those in monetary economy or those in subsistence, how they are living, their housing conditions, we are asking those questions, and so forth. And of course also, they are, you remember we're asking a lot of questions on health, on disability, and what have you. So that question will be answered. We shall also answer the question of the assets in the country and how we dispose many of those assets. We're interested in knowing how we dispose electronic wastes because of the issue of environment and so forth. Then we shall also answer the question of where we get services from. And this one is both from the household questionnaire and the community questionnaire. Community questionnaire was administered by the parish supervisors, and not only looking at what services are in that village, but also we had focus group discussions where people would say, here we have a health center too, but it has no health workers, has no medicine, etc. So all of those will be answered in where we get services from, yes, and the quality of services that are accessed.
Okay. Honorable Namugga, you kick off a discussion following the report. In fact, as Dr. Mukiza said, this is a report for now.
I thank Dr. Mukiza for the submission, but for the interest of the leader is now that we have the report, what next? Because our interest is how will these people be served. I want to remind Doctor, this might not be his area, that this country is indebted to a tune of 100 trillion. We have borrowed to that tune. So if we have seen an increment from around 34 to 45 trillion, an increment of, he said, 11 million people, this worries the current government. For the remaining 2 years, do we have the capacity to give quality services to the population that we have? 2, look at the demography, for example, the youth. How have we planned to have these ones more productive than seeing them as a burden to this country? This brings us back. You cannot, by any standard, leave out the issue of budgeting. We have a 72 trillion budget for the financial year 24-25, which is purely a scam and a lie. Honorable Katesh knows that when you look at the budget performance for the last 5 years and for the last year of 22-23, the actual was at 43 trillion, much as we had budgeted for 52. Financial year 23-24, what was the half-year performance? Then how do you dare read to a country a budget of 72 trillion? Do you know why I'm taking that direction? It's because our interest is knowing how many people we have and how best can they be served. He has spoken about issues of health. For now, if the government policy is to have a health, for example, a health center 3 in every parish, do we have them? Are they equipped? Do you have staff? I told you, when you look at staffing across the country, we got a consolidated report on the government payroll, and staffing is at 30%. So how do we ensure that these youth that form the majority of our population, can we see government filling its positions at least up to 60%? You will have achieved, first of all, reducing the unemployment, but also increasing the productivity in these areas. The reasons as to why we have lines in Mulago is because we don't have medical workers there. 2, in the issue of expenditure versus taxes, we've just passed the tax bills. Who is going to pay these taxes? Who is going to pay? After paying, what happens? You saw the parliamentary exhibition. I should inform the country that in our minority report, Honorable Kateshi knows it very well, that we indicated that Parliament every day spends 2.2 billion on itself. The head of this nation spends 2.8 billion on himself every day. So when you look at the extravagancy in line of how we spend public resources and in the forecast of the increasing population, are we ready to serve this country? If we have that high debt, how are we going to service the debt but still serving the people? Let me give you an example. This is a country where every time we increase on borrowing, but the services reduce. He knows every financial year the discretionary fund is reduced. Every financial year the discretionary fund is reduced. If he gives you the reason, if he's to tell you that the discretionary fund is reduced, tell him what is the performance in actuals. So I should say it is good to carry out the census that was expensively done.
395 billion.
Expensively done, and I should say the capture, if he talked about 45 trillion, I'm telling you Uganda is close to 50 plus trillion, because most people were left out. If you carried out a survey on a village and you went for an head count how many were counted, you cannot, they didn't cover 60% per village. So there are those that were left out. It might not be their mistake, but to some extent, yes, some Ugandans relaxed, but to some extent it is theirs, because they were given an assignment to cover the whole country. At least if they covered close to 80%, you can say, there is a margin of error here and there. In summary, we have faced a challenge of a government that is interested in survival for itself. How do we stay in power instead of serving people? For Mr. Museveni, you rather have him in power, though you don't have drugs in hospitals. That is why Mulago, I can give you an example. Mulago needs a budget of 110 billion to have medical supplies and medicines in that hospital. Do you know what they get? 26 billion for a year. 26 out of 110.
And remember, when we don't
so
have money,
when you look at all this, we have challenges in prioritization. Lastly, our investment profile. I want to ask the Honorable Katesh, if you looked into an evaluation of what is your investment plan, what is the basis of you borrowing for this country, where you even borrow for what you cannot use because it is someone's deal. When you borrow, it is a deal, a kickback, leave the money to rest. How? Well, who determines the NDP3? And do you follow the processes? The NDP3 or the planning investment profile for this country begins from the executive, then it gets back to the board. That is why prioritization for this country is a scam. So in brief, let us respect structures for this country so that we can serve our people better.
Nafi?
Like I say, NRM
come to the microphone. The topic is census.
Census, yes. And Mr. Mukiza here.
Dr. Mukiza is there, not NRM.
He's not in NRM?
No.
Are you?
The topic is census report.
It's good you've come. It's good you've come. When Ugandans, our minds are very fickle and we don't last long on something. So quickly we've forgotten what a mess that whole exercise was.
When you have a report, we are going to discuss it severally because we have 10 years of discussing it.
Now we are discussing the report, but I want to step back a bit because now we have him
we did we had two shows with him. We did.
With him.
That's why he said we were pushing him into a corner.
I was still on suspension, I think.
Yeah.
In the doghouse.
Go to the report. That one we've already covered.
But for me, I think as a country, I don't know whether we realize how third world we are, and for us to even prioritize information about, and I'm not trivializing the environment, but for this exercise, I think what we needed most are the numbers. I'm still struggling to believe that at some point we were saying, on average, we are 48 million, and now we are 45 million.
Who was saying?
In the population. I think that is the figure Ministry of Finance was using.
The problem, Oscar, people are fond of listening to foreigners, the numbers of foreigners. Who never do censuses here.
If they're the ones,
you remember the debate I had with the World Bank and UN in 2022. They are the ones putting us on 48.
Yeah.
But I challenged them.
Yes.
Show me their report. Now this activist is taking their number. We've told you in 2014.
But when you
and for me, I use facts,
Mr. Mukiza,
not emotional.
When you conduct a symbolic census, we are more inclined to believe the numbers of these foreigners.
Yes, I told you. In 2014, we were 34.6 million.
Okay. And what were we in 2016? What were we in 2019?
No.
What number?
No.
We didn't have a census.
No, we didn't have a census,
Yes.
and at that point, we can't say we've remained 34 million. So, and we have to get
we
a
are now
number.
45.9.
No, you see, but in the intervening
But-
years, we can't continue
Yes,
using
now-
the other number.
now,
We have to have a
yes.
number.
What
And that is
the
why, in
number
the
we
absence
have-
of you boss giving us a number, we will take what the foreigners are giving us.
Because you are dependent on foreigners. In your
No,
mind,
because
Nafi.
you better respect
where there
your
is a gap,
institutions
it
because
will
they are
be
the ones
filled.
who- Now, the shambolicness. You see, some people, even before we did census, they had in their mind that this thing will fail. It is shambolic. You remember the radio was seated here
But
the
it was
first day.
shambolic.
Shambolic. They are dreaming shambolicism. Now, I want to refer them where they come from. Let them go back where they come
This
from.
one is from
No, we
Nienda.
did.
Wait, let them
we
go
did.
back.
We
I'm giving them an
participated in this
assignment.
census, so we know the shambolic.
I'm giving you an assignment.
Go on.
Including Honorable Namugga. Go back to your constituency and check your LC1s. Yes, your LC1s, who themselves have written certifying that their enumerators did
Mr. Mukiza,
100%.
we were part of this exercise. They counted us. So when we tell you our experience
Since you
was, they were
since you accounted
shambolic.
then, how shambolic was it? Was an enumerator looking in shambles?
No,
Was
their
it-
machines were not working.
Who told
And when
you?
I was in Nyenga, they told me go back to Naguru. And when I was in Naguru, they told me go back to
No,
Nyenga.
they don't
No,
tell
it is-
people
At some
that
point, I
way.
almost kidnapped
Where did you
them.
spend the night?
Uh-huh.
But
On the-
continue.
on the 10th.
We
So what I'm saying is we need to do better. And Mr. Mukeza, if you want us to believe your numbers, you've got to be more believable. And believability comes from your actions, the way you conduct yourselves, the way you conduct your exercises. A country is not going to believe you when you do things in a certain way. So, and you could come here and defend it, but the experiences of the people meant to believe you is what is what indicts you. So you could say, for me, ask your LC, you are very organized, but if I had a different experience and 3, 4, 5 more Ugandans had different experiences, and the experiences were shambolic, that is what they will take, not your words. So back to my point with these censuses, I think we need to concentrate our resources on certain numbers that we think are key to what will help the populations. It doesn't make sense to ask people about their mental health in an exercise like this, because it doesn't.
Why not?
Because even if you go and say 35% of Ugandans told me they were angry, then what?
Yeah, then
We're
you
a
know
third world country
35%. We are
who all we need is food and water. It's I think that is
No,
that is
it
for
is-
countries
then
further
you know-
down the road than us.
Nafi, if-
especially when you don't have the resources.
Nafka, if
to-
Kenya had asked that question and they'd known that 35% are
Gen
angry,
Zs were angry,
yes, they would have
reacted
planned better.
Ruto wouldn't
Because
be
they
making
started
the
even
changes that
challenging
he's
intelligence.
changing now.
Thank you.
But what I'm saying is maybe the questions about the environment, the environmental bodies should take up those ones and do their exercises as and when they need this
We are going to wait.
information.
Someone has said that if you give Mukiza numbers, he'll play with them. Let him talk the difference between Chigezi and Karamoja, but I guess that's where he's going next. Let me have Lydia before you, Katesh, and I'll have you. Yes, on
To tell us about your census
Census.
experience.
No,
Where
no.
were you?
we talked about the census experience. It's on the report.
Oh, yeah, of course, I would like to congratulate Dr. Mukiza and the entire team, because you've been progressive, but also you were here before, then during, and we were telling you the issues that were.
He was here during, yes, twice.
And then now, when the report has been launched, the launch of the report.
And we shall invite him severally on singular topics of the census.
He has now told us he's answering particular questions, reports on the particular question of the census, which is also quite interesting. So for that, I think we have to acknowledge your role and giving us statistics and data that are important for not only planning for our country, but for even future aspirations on how else we can use the data. Because the data is broad. People are complaining about the questions. Now we are going to see how useful those questions are when you bring the answers to the questions,
True.
including health, including health, including wealth, including issues of age, including issues of
meals.
identity.
I want to find out meals. How many meals?
Identity.
When we get the report on meals.
But also
Are
issues
you
of
going to be fed
identity,
better?
because there was the question
need
on
to find out how many meals
ethnicity,
you're
which is
having.
very important, and then the issues of faith. They're also because they are important for not only planning, but for issues of inclusion and participation in the different aspirations of our country. So mine is really to appreciate challenges notwithstanding. Our work is to tell you challenges or gaps, and then you go and correct them, because this is a government process. Even for budgeting, even for priority setting, census data is very, very important. And it's not just numbers. There's also the quality aspects, so which is very, very important. And I think I don't have much,
because it influences who is going to believe your data. So quality is also important, so just the quantitative, but also there's an aspect of the qualitative which should influence our meager resources allocation. Now that we have Namugga and the Honorable Katesh here in the studio, this is some of the information that should influence priorities. We are also in Uganda. We should influence how we do our manifesto, but also on how we plan for the country, but most important, how we allocate and track the resources that you allocate.
Your manifesto is expiring 2 years and you don't have time in 2026, so this might
don't speak for us. Do you have to become NRM or what? You can come and
Katesh,
we know what we are doing.
I was going to very nearly I was going to say Lydia has agreed with Namugga, but I realize the problems that it may cause. So Katesh, Honorable Namugga, Dr. Mwebesa has given you information. Honorable, tap her on her shoulder and tell her to leave Lydia alone. Dr. Mwebesa has given you information that there's a health center 3 in every sub-county, not parish. Katesh, you're on.
Well, first of all, I also congratulate Dr. Mukiza. And I think what is happening...
As you're saying, Mukiza is branding us as census saboteurs.
No.
The staff who wrote a number on my gate and left is the saboteur. Could he still give us the contact number? Is it too late to give information to you, boss? Go on, Katesh.
For me, in the circumstances, they fairly did well. Because remember, census requires money. And for the last how many years, I think they used to plan, but the money was not available. But even by the time they got the money, I think it was a little bit late. Not the adequate timing was available for them to perhaps do things a little bit better. But having said that, I think they did their best. I was constantly updated. I have one of your officers who kept... I think the communication was flowing, even when negativity would come. But generally, Oscar, you have to understand, even the listeners, that nowadays in Uganda, I think there is a general negative mindset towards anything, government is planning to do. There is nothing that enough here can give credit. Whether it is what government is planning, it has failed before it even starts. That is in the mindset of Ugandans. Regardless.
Why?
I don't know.
Because
she says she was counted.
No.
She says she was counted,
Katesh,
but then she says the process was
Katesh, if your minister gives you a dummy report, so why would you think others now should go and trust institutions?
No, we are talking about we are talking about censorship.
Now you've run away from these other questions. I told you,
of course, dummy reports. I will never.
Mukiza here said, trust your institutions.
Now, for me,
Lydia said it is Parliament, not NRM.
No, we still have some institutions which are very clear, and I have. Now, my point is that I know Lydia here is a board member of NPA. We are developing National Government Plan 4.
She also on SEC.
She also sits
powerful
on SEC.
Powerful people in the country.
This census should be an opportunity for us to use the information to plan better for the generations we are leading. And I want to ask Doctor, I hope that these statistics will give us the census will give us the planning statistics up to the lowest level. Because when we talk of parish development model for example, which we have been implementing, one of the issues we have been having is, do we have parish level statistics, especially on economic, on the economic aspect? What is the GDP or per capita income of each of my 23 parishes in the municipality in Chema? I want to have that information. That information will help us when we are assessing some of these interventions by government to know that you are actually planning right. So I hope that the detailed statistics will come out district by district, constituency by constituency, up to the lowest level, so that we actually plan better. Even us as leaders, we mobilize our people to be able to say, this is the information available, how many households, we've been talking about increasing household incomes. We need to have that information, and then it should be used. But finally, Oscar, there is something that is clear out of this. We have very many young people. The aspect of the level
up to 72%.
The level of productivity in this country, for me, is the worrying statistic. Because if I see how many young people every day go to my mother with CVs looking for jobs, myself, anyone in my inbox, I get worried, because there are countries where you go, you find people, their mindset has changed towards trying to do something. But here everybody is looking for employment, survival, but the level of productivity. I have a friend who has a factory in industrial area. He told me one time that on a payday, after paying, let's say on Friday, the next morning, half of the people don't turn up in the factory to work. So we have this mindset problem of a generation of people who are very unproductive, but they have to depend on the state. And that is the biggest challenge for us as leaders. How do we change the mindset of our people to make them more productive? Because if everybody is producing something, that something is consolidated is the economic growth. But without productivity, we have a problem of the demographic dividend that the doctor is talking about. It must come out of a productive population.
Okay. I'll give Dr. Mkiza last word on this census. Namfi must understand that census is a scientific exercise that is verifiable. Listening to BBC figures is conjecture and not science. Yeah, that's Dr. Namara telling you. Yusuf says, after this census, I believe we only need to record birth and death statistics, and we should be good. Where we had saved a message for you. Tell Dr. Mukiza that his results are that going forward, can we have regular recordings of births and deaths? How do you want to conclude this topic, Dr. Mukiza, for now, where you are just reporting figures?
Yes, I want to thank you for giving us opportunity to clarify more on the figures. And I also want to agree with those commentators that it's a good practice to keep vital statistics. That's births, deaths, register. But that doesn't stop any country, even those countries that do have strong birth and death register, conduct population censuses, be it US, be it UK, be it Canada, be it what. Because it also only gives you the increase in numbers, but these other socioeconomic characteristics are never captured. But we have agreed with the NERA that this information is going to be collected. We are going to leave actually these equipments to parish level so that they can be capturing births, deaths, these other occurrences, and what have you. Then on the usage at parish level, yes, we have information on PDM, MUGA, and other government interventions. We're asking questions at household level and also at the community level. And so we shall be able to get this. Going forward, we are going to develop geography at the village level, at the parish level, with the population inside, and all the social amenities that are surrounding it. That will be producing thematic reports going forward. But in the final report, we shall also try as much as possible to give the information that we think the country needs.
Yes.
Now, the next steps is that it is a requirement to undertake a post-enumeration survey after census to check the coverage and the content. To answer these questions my friends talking about, that post-enumeration survey will show us whether we are shambolic or not. And I agree with the person telling you that population census is a science. It's not a street game. And that pace is going to be conducted by independent people. They are experts from universities, Makerere, and the public and private sector. So they are going to do it, and they will show us
when, Dr.
this month.
This month.
They have started preparations this month. By beginning of August, they should be out of the field, and they start marching. And therefore, when people see an exercise now, which is almost similar to census, but it will be doing just a random survey. Every district will be visited, but not every enumeration area will be visited. But whatever information we get will be representative of how that area was. So those people who are not captured during the census, if they are a chance that they fall in the random sample,
they will be captured.
Then they will be captured, and then we shall compare.
Okay.
And if
there's a Julius who is recommending that.
If the percentage is higher than the recommended internationally, then we redistribute the population. What matters actually are not numbers. It's the population distribution by the region and by the age groups. So that when you are planning, you are actually giving the indicative planning figures. And we always give them.
Okay.
Uganda Bureau of Statistics is the only institution that provides indicative planning figures.
Yeah.
We are working with the NPA to develop the result and reporting framework for NDP3.
Dr. Mukiza, I'm going to interrupt you. To tell Namfi, when Dr. Mukiza was here, people like Namfi said that their reports are very good and can be trusted. That was Semoju himself. So we will invite you back end of August, for the next phase of discussion, Dr. Mukiza?
No problem.
And then ask your PR people to look at Twitter, X formerly Twitter, because the bashing of the census is quite high over there. Honorable Namugga, you start with it. We only have 10 minutes left. I'm going to ask the station to give me 3 minutes. So just 2 minutes. Here's we go down to a bit of politics. So someone wrote to me, said, one day in Uganda. Number one, election results will be announced 24 hours after voting. Number two, the losing government will peacefully vacate their offices on the day of election results. Three, and their houses. Three, the campaign period will be peaceful and short. The voting period will last 12 hours. The voting process will be totally peaceful one day in our lifetime. This person was commenting on yesterday's results, landslide result in the UK. So do you believe we can get there in our lifetime?
For now, that is very impossible because of the challenges that you have in the Constitution. That is why we are moving as the opposition, if government doesn't do it in time, for constitutional review and electoral reforms. We're going to come up with a private members bill from the alternative government to have amendments. For example, what is the role of the army and the police and all the men and the force, the men in uniform, what is their role in politics? Two, the term limits. These must be, we must reinstate the term limits. Then how do we get those that occupy offices of the Electoral Commission? So those are serious questions in regard to who appoints those that occupy those offices. As long as those are still appointed by the president, you can never in the lifetime of this country have a peaceful election if you have all those ones, the office bearers appointed by the president, who they should appease. So it is very hard for you to have a free and fair election in this country if you don't objectively look at those constitutional review reforms and electoral amendments that will have us, everyone, that will have an election that is participatory and inclusive for every Ugandan, and good enough. Even the NRM colleagues of ours have suffered the same. Okay. You've had the Lydia's colleagues, elections have been rigged. Tango Do is a problem, so we want to face all those challenges that you are not rigged at the time of.
Nanfi, I'm coming. You'll have last word to use such a word.
But I'm helping you to have a free and fair election.
Nanfi,
with primaries.
In our lifetime, it shall happen.
Yes, of course it will happen. Things have changed, and technology is speeding up these changes. So I'm very, very optimistic. You saw what happened in Kenya. And over the weekend I was in Kenya, and when you talk to a cab person, you see you see that now they are more and more aware of what is going on. They understand what they are fighting against, because in Uganda previously all the riots that we've had, all the demonstrations about changing leadership, but you see Kenyans, when you talk to them, the person even at the cash at the counter, they know what they're coming up against.
Thank you.
So the dissemination of information.
One day in our lifetime, I told you it's just to
being optimistic.
You're still being optimistic. Okay,
yes.
Katesh, so, one day in our lifetime. Yeah, it says the campaign period will be peaceful and short. Campaign period will be short and peaceful. You already in your constituency, Shema, people are campaigning.
Well, first of all, of course, I think leaders, we have to listen more and less aggressive and arrogance, because we are in an era where information is everywhere. You cannot get away with anything. Okay, there is a lot of misinformation, a lot of negative whatever, and I mentioned
like that bit where I said Katesh
and
was
I
hiding.
mentioned it that it's going to get nasty. More nasty with artificial intelligence now coming into the picture. So as leaders, we have to listen to the people. We have to be very careful with the language we use, but also the decisions we make.
Okay, thank you.
But
Katesh.
having said that, if we don't deal with poverty,
it's going to be a problem.
It still remains because everybody thinks.
Thank you.
The poverty mindset.
Thank you, Katesh. I'm going to Lydia now. People are listening to Gang Lydia. This Mede in Paris said, on at least add-on, that results will be released without opposition members being under house arrest. So, Lydia, do you agree one day it will happen?
First of all, you know very well, you know my position, and it has not changed. I'm consistent. We do not have opposition in Uganda.
One day shall we have opposition?
If we have opposition one day in Uganda, then we'll talk about what you're asking. But let me get back to Honorable Namugga, because it's our first time actually at the gang. I must apologize the way I handled you, because I've been listening to, including this morning on NBS, there's been a consistent narrative of a wrong story about the NRM. So when you came, I had to be very firm, just to make a correct narrative about the NRM and how we want to correct what's internally. Keep quiet, Namfi. Listen. So I had to be consistent and let you know that you are passing a wrong narrative about NRM.
What was wrong?
And we are correcting in our party.
So make the correction. What was
information wrong? To appoint or to propose nominees of leadership of the committees came to us very late. It arrived us on Tuesday morning, and we met at midday. And you are telling us
who sends that information?
Supposed to be the chief whip.
The chief whip.
So it's an internal thing. It's our internal issue, but I'm saying it now openly because they have raised it in the public. For us, we were quiet. We waited in sec and corrected it in sec. Now they have made it a narrative even at Parliament, even the Namuggas speaking for NRM. So I'm trying to correct it because I never speak for NUP. And if you want to know Namugga, there is the story. That's what I'm explaining. Can I speak Luganda? Because you're not listening. I am saying we had an internal matter which we are correcting. Apparently, it has now come out to the public again to malign the NRM party. That's why I'm correcting it in public. I shouldn't have. And I'm only saying the issue of leadership came to us very late. It came on Tuesday morning telling us to approve at midday on that very Tuesday. I dropped from Umbali. So we are trying to correct it internally. Please give us a chance to correct that internally.
Yeah.
Don't go on air to say things about NRM. She did. But I'm explaining to her because she's now telling lies.
Microphone to Dr. Mukiza. Namfi.
She's telling lies that it is NRM that failed, and I'm telling her we didn't.
These guys are girls. We've run out of time. Dr. Mukiza.
So now let me correct. Namugga.
You have corrected.
Remove the log in your eye in Noop and leave the small stick in NRM because you are sorting for us. So,
Dr. Mukiza. You are having last word on gang. No, we are out of time, Lydia. I allowed you that. We are out of time. Lydia, let me tell you one thing. You've made the correction. Dr. Mukiza.
Sir.
Yes, sir. Please, her microphone is switched off. Give me the last word. Yours is on loud and clear. Go on.
On census?
On census or anything you wish to have last word on gang. Go on. Namfi and Lydia, your microphones are off.
We are going now to, as I said,
yes, you continue.
To keep analyzing the data.
Yes. You are going to keep analyzing
to address the issues and the data so that we can disseminate a full report.
Yeah.
We are now, as I said, planning for post-simulation survey, which is going to be conducted this month and the first week of August, which will help us understand the coverage and the content.
Okay. Thank you so much. Listeners of the Capital Gang, thank you very much for listening in. Thank you, Star Cafe, for the coffee and bites. The coffee and bites made Lydia very strong and Namugga very strong. I after the show, the microphones are switched off. After the show, I'm also going to take on Lydia as a panelist. I am Oscar Semoya Msoke, and I shall see you next week.